Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. I cordially welcome all of you to the official English podcast channel, The Inquiry, which works under the supervision of ISKCON Jhunjhunu. Today, we'll be relishing one of the most auspicious of Srila Prabhupada, that is, On the Way to Krishna. The book commences its way to this material world with the first chapter, Throughway to Happiness. From the rising waves of the morning to the starry nights, we have all been chasing happiness. But most of us are actually unaware of what the real happiness is. We see so much advertised about happiness, but speaking, there are very few happy people around us. This is because very few people are actually aware what the real platform of happiness is. The real platform of happiness is beyond the temporary world. It is this real happiness that is described in the Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna to Arjuna. Happiness is generally perceived through our senses. A stone, being a non-living object, has no senses and thus cannot perceive happiness or distress. There are two kinds of consciousness, developed and undeveloped. Undeveloped consciousness cannot perceive happiness or distress more intensely as compared to developed consciousness. For example, trees, they do have a consciousness, but it is not developed because they may stand for a long time in all kinds of weathers, but they have no way of perceiving miseries. If a human being was asked to stand actually like a tree for 3 days itself, or even less, he would not be able to tolerate it at all. The conclusion is that every living being feels happiness or distress according to the degree of its development, the development of its consciousness. The happiness that we are experiencing in this material world is not the real happiness. For example, if one asks a tree, "Are you feeling happy?" The tree, if it could answer, might say that, "Yes, I am happy standing here all the year. I'm enjoying the wind and the snowfall very much." But, okay, this may be enjoyed by a tree. However, for a human being, this is a very low standard of happiness, or I would say enjoyment even. There are different kinds and grades of living entities, and their conceptions and perceptions of happiness are also of different types and grades. Although one animal may see that the another animal is being slaughtered, he will go right away on chewing his grass. Why? Because he has no knowledge to understand that he himself may be the next one. He is thinking that he is happy, but at the next moment, even he can be the one who is to be slaughtered the next. In this way, there are different degrees of happiness, yet all of them, what is the highest happiness? Shri Krishna tells Arjuna, Sukham atyantikam yattat buddhi graham atindriyam veti yatrana chaivayam sitais chalati tatvatah. In that choice state, samadhi, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realize the transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth. Gita chapter 6, shloka 21. Buddhi means intelligence. One has to be intelligent if he wants to enjoy. Animals do not really have a developed intelligence and therefore they enjoy their life as human beings can. For example, a dead man, he do has his hands, nose, eyes and all of the sense organs, but still he cannot enjoy. Why? Because the enjoying energy, that spiritual spark has left him, and therefore the body has now no power. If one further looks into the matter with little intelligence, he can understand that it was not the body that was enjoying at all, but that small spiritual spark that was within. That was the enjoying potency. Although one may think that he is enjoying by the bodily sense organs, the real enjoy is that spiritual spark. Although we may not be aware of it, but it is actually impossible for the body to experience enjoyment without the presence of that spiritual spark. For example, if a man is offered the dead body of a beautiful woman, will he accept it? No, because the spiritual spark has left already. Not only was it enjoying within the body, but it was also maintaining the body when that spark leaves. the body simply deteriorates. It has no meaning. It becomes lifeless. It follows that if spirit is enjoying, it must have its senses also. Otherwise, how can it enjoy? The Vedas confirm that the spirit soul, although atomic in size, is the actual enjoying agent. However, it is just not possible for us to measure the soul. But this doesn't mean that it doesn't have any measurement. An object may seem to us to be no bigger than a point, but it too have length and width. It too has its own dimensions. Thus, we can say that soul has also its own dimensions, and the thing is that we can't perceive it. For example, when we buy a suit or dress, it is meant to fit the body. Similarly, spiritual spark also has a form. Otherwise, how is it that the material body has grown to accommodate it? The conclusion is that the spiritual spark is not impersonal. It is an actual person. God is an actual person, and the spiritual spark, being that fragmental part of him, is also a person. It is similar to the situation that if a father has a personality and individuality, that implies that son also has them. And for example, if the son has them, implies that father too has them. So how can we, being sons of God, assert our personality and individuality and at the same time deny them to our Father, the Supreme Lord? Atindriyam, that we have to transcend to these material senses before we can appreciate the real happiness. Ramante yogino nante satyananda chidatmani. The yogis who are aspiring after spiritual life are also tasting enjoyment by focusing on the super soul within. If there is no pleasure, if there is no enjoyment, why would even yogis take so much trouble? What kind of pleasure are they acquiring out of these troubles? What are they actually relishing? Why are they taking so much difficulties and hardships just to control these senses? The fact is that the pleasure they actually extract is ananta, that is endless. How is this? Because the spirit soul is eternal, the Supreme Lord is eternal, and therefore the reciprocation of their loving exchange is eternal. One who is actually intelligent will refrain himself from all those flickering sensual enjoyments of this material body and fix his enjoyment in spiritual life. His participation in the spiritual life with Supreme Lord is called Rasa Leela. We have often heard of Krishna's Rasa Leela with the cowherd girls in Vrindavana. That is not like ordinary exchanges that takes place generally between these material bodies. Rather, it is an exchange of feelings through their spiritual bodies. Has to be somewhat intelligent to understand this. For a foolish man who cannot understand what real happiness is, seeks happiness in this material world. For example, if there is a man who doesn't know how a sugarcane tastes and is simply told that it is very sweet to chew, so he may ask, "Oh, how does it look like?" And someone answers that it just looks like a bamboo rod. And so the foolish man started to chew all kinds of bamboo rods. How can he begin to experience the sweetness of sugarcane then? Similarly, we are trying to acquire happiness and pleasure, but we are trying for them by achieving this material body. Therefore, there is neither happiness nor pleasure. For time being, there may be some kind of a very little feeling of pleasure, but that's not the actual pleasure, for it is temporary. It's like that show of lightning which may see flashing in the sky. That may momentarily seem like lightning, but the real lightning is way more beyond that. Because a person doesn't really know what happiness is, he simply deviates away from it. The process of establishing oneself in real happiness is this process of Krishna consciousness. By Krishna consciousness, we can gradually develop our real intelligence and naturally enjoy relishing the spiritual happiness as we make the spiritual advancement. And as we begin to relish this spiritual happiness, we proportionately abandon all the material happiness. And as we make progress in understanding the absolute truth, we naturally become detached from this false happiness. If somehow or the other one is promoted to that stage of Krishna consciousness, what is the result? Yam labdva chaparam labham manyate nadhikam tatah yasmin sito na dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate. Upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty, which is from Gita chapter 6, text 22. When one attains that stage, other achievements automatically appear insignificant. In this material world, we are trying to chase so many things: riches, women, fame, beauty, knowledge. But as soon as we are situated in Krishna consciousness, we realize that none of them is better than this. Krishna consciousness is so potent that this little taste can save one from the greatest of all dangers. As one begins to relish the taste of Krishna consciousness, he begins to see all other so-called enjoyments and attainments as flat and tasteless. As one begins to relish the taste of Krishna consciousness, he begins to see that even the greatest of all dangers cannot disturb him at all. There are so many dangers in life. Why? This material place is known as Dukkhalayam Shashvatam. But what we do is we generally tend to close our eyes because we are so foolish and we just simply try to adjust with these dangers. We may have many dangers and many dangerous moments even today, even currently you must be facing some of them. But whenever we train ourselves with Krishna consciousness, we prepare ourselves to go home, to back to Godhead. We'll not care for all other dangers. Our attitude will become then that dangers simply come and go, and so let them happen. It is very difficult to make such kind of adjustment as long as one is on the material platform and is identifying himself with this gross material body. And this gross material body is simply composed of these perishable elements. But as one advances more and more in Krishna consciousness, the more he becomes free from all those bodily designations and also this material entanglement. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the material world is compared to a great ocean. Within this material universes, there are millions and billions of planets floating in the space. And we can just simply imagine how many Atlantic and Pacific oceans are there. In fact, the whole material universe can be compared to a great ocean of misery, an ocean of birth and death. In order to cross this ocean of a boat is needed, a really strong boat is needed, and that strong boat will be the lotus feet of Krishna. We should immediately get aboard on that boat. We should not hesitate, thinking that Krishna's feet are very small. Come on, the whole universe is simply resting on his leg. For one who takes shelters of his lotus feet, it is said that the material universe is no more significant than a puddle of water found in the impressions of a calf's hoof print. There is certainly no difficulty in crossing over such a small puddle. Tam viyat dukkha samyoga viyogam yoga samjitam. This indeed is actual freedom from all the miseries arising from this material contact. Gita chapter 6 text 23. We are entangled in this material world due to uncontrolled senses, and the yoga process is mean to control all these senses. If somehow we can manage to control these senses, we can turn our face to the actual spiritual happiness and make our life successful. Sanishchayena yokatvyo yoga nirvina chetasa sankalpa prabhavan kamams tyakatva sarvana cheshata manasaivendriya gramam viniyamam samantatah. सैने सैनेर उपरमे बुद्ध्या धृति गृहीत्या आत्मसंस्था मनो कृत्वा न किंचित् अपि चिन्तयेत्. यतो यतो निश्चलति मानश्चञ्चलमस्थिरं ततस्ततो नियम्यत्येद आत्मनि एवं वशं नयेत्. One should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with undeviating determination and faith, and not to be deviated from the path. One should abandon without exception all the material desires born of mental speculation, and thus control all the senses on all the sides by the mind. Gradually, step by step, with full conviction, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence sustained by full conviction, and thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else. From wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of self. Gita, chapter 6, text 24, 25th and 26th. The mind is always disturbed. It is going sometimes this way and sometimes that way. By yoga practice, we literally drag the mind to Krishna consciousness. The mind strays from Krishna consciousness to so many exterior objects because from time immemorial, life after life, that has been our practice. Due to this, there may be a great difficulty in the beginning when one tries to fix his mind in Krishna consciousness, but with time, these difficulties can all be overcome. It is because the mind is agitated and not fixed on Krishna, it goes from one thought to another. For instance, when we are engaged in work, memories of events that happened 10, 20 or even 40 years ago may suddenly come to our mind for no apparent reason. These thoughts come to us from our subconscious. This is because the waves rising and thus minds become agitated. And if we agitate a lake or a pond, all the mud that was earlier settled to the bottom comes to the surface. And similarly, the case goes with mind. It is agitated with so many thoughts that rise from the subconscious that had been stored over years there. And if we do not disturb the pond, the mud will settle automatically to the bottom. This yoga process does. This means the yoga process is actually meant to quiet the mind and allow all these thoughts to settle. For this reason, there are so many rules and regulations to follow in order to keep the mind from becoming agitated. If we follow the rules and regulations, gradually the mind will come under control. And there are so many do's and don'ts. And if one is serious about training the mind, he has to follow them. If one acts whimsically, what is the possibility of mind being controlled? When the mind is finally trained to the point that it will think nothing but of Krishna, it will attain peace and will become very tranquil. Prasannata manasam hinam yoginam sukhamuttamam upayati santarajasam brahma bhute akalmasam. The yogi whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion. He realizes his creative identity with the Supreme Lord and thus is freed from all the reactions to the past deeds. Gita chapter 6 text 27. The mind is always convocating objects for happiness. I am always thinking, this will make me happy or that will make me happy. Happiness is here or happiness is there. In this way, mind is taking us anywhere and everywhere. And it is as though we are riding a chariot behind an unbridled horse. We have no power over where we are going, but we can only sit in horror and watch helplessly. As soon as the mind is engaged in the process of Krishna consciousness, specifically by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, then the wild horses of the mind will gradually come under the control. We must engage in Krishna's service every moment of our life in order to keep the restless and turbulent mind from dragging us from one object to the another in vain search of happiness in this temporary material world. Yujjant evam sadatmanam yogi vigata kalmasaha sukhena brahma samsparsam atyantam sukhamasnute. Thus, the self-controlled yogi constantly engaged in practice becomes free from all the material contamination and achieves the highest state of perfection and happiness in transcendental loving service to the God. Gita chapter 6 text 28. Krishna serves as patron for one who is devoted to him. When one is in difficulty, his patron saves him. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is the real friend of every living entity and we have to revive our friendship with him. The method of reviving this friendship is the process of Krishna consciousness. By practice of Krishna consciousness, the mundane passionate hankering will completely stop. This passionate hankering keeps us divorced from Krishna. Krishna is within us and is waiting for us to turn to him. But we are too busy passionately eating the fruits of the tree of material desires. The passionate compulsion to enjoy these fruits must stop and we must situate ourselves in our real identity as Brahman, the spirit soul, the pure spirit. Today we'll be concluding our session here itself. Stay tuned and we'll be meeting on next Saturday at the same. Hare Krishna. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada.